Hello everyone, my name is Krystyna Khara. I'm a multimedia artist, curator and educator, and today we're going to learn about idea visualization and visual testing. So what is idea visualization? So when you come up with creative solution for your project, as you learned in the previous units through brainstorming and visual research, it is time to move on to visual testing. This stage comes before you jump into serious production and start investing in a lot of effort and money into your project. Before, you need to do pre-production, where you're going to test your ideas, your layouts, find your collaborators, and possibly apply for sponsorship, pitch your ideas to clients or potential teammates. We're going to learn a few visualization techniques today, such as sketching, collaging, composing, and the eye scaffolding. As you can see as an example of this slide, when you're presenting an idea on this concept board, we can see entire journey which neat artist made. So we can see their inspiration, which comes from the reptiles, and how they research their texture, patterns, and colors through sketching and collaging, and later move on to the samples and testing of how the final product may look like, but it's still all very beginning stages of their process. We're going to start looking into sketching first, because I believe it's the most natural way to present your ideas, and if there is still nothing wrong when you're using just pencil and paper, I believe that nowadays it may be more common and more accessible to use your phone or your tablet. When we're talking about sketching, it is important that you are not chasing some sort of finesse or trying to create a finished masterpiece at this stage of your project. What you're trying to do is just find the simplest way to visualize your idea more schematically, just to communicate to your team or just to test various options. As you can see this example from a very acclaimed contemporary artist, Philip Chustik, who's creating a very complex, detailed final outcomes. He as well starts with a very simple raw sketching on his iPad. As for software you may use, I suggest using Procreate if you are using iPad. Another alternative which is free available is software called Qyter, which was recommended by many of my students. And if you are working on Android devices, I suggest you to try Sketchbook by Autodesk. Another technique which you may find useful for visualizing and testing your visual solution is collaging. For beginners, I suggest to try a very fun tool made by Pinterest and available only on mobile version only, which is called Pinterest Collage. So basically you are just downloading this application, and after that you can use entire Pinterest library to compose elements and cut out different parts of the images which you want and assemble them in a way where you can test different layouts. As we can see at this example, we can notice that the artist tried to create a silhouette which is inspired by mushrooms and their textures, which is later can be turned into a fashion design or character design or a costume. And you can apply this technique to a variety of different specialisms you are working in. If you want a little bit more control and you want to use those materials for further proposing and inviting other collaborators, or possibly especially pitching your ideas to clients or applying for sponsorship or grants, you need to make sure that all your images are copyright free, and that's when I recommend you to use stock images. So for more advanced collages, you can use stock images library and collage them in Canva, Adobe Express, Photoshop, or other programs from Creative Suite. On this website, I collected my favorite stock libraries, where you can find a very high quality photography. If you want a lot of texture or different kinds of photography with models and objects, I would say Unsplash, it's always my first choice. For video footage and moving image, you can test out Pixabay or Pexels. And there is also a few websites where you can source nice copyright-free illustrations and vector graphics. So for the last methodology, and we're going to look today, is AI scaffolding. So it's important to say that whenever you use AI, you need to clearly state it in your work, and AI is just a supportive tool for your creative vision, but not a substitute for it. So even before you started implementing those tools, you already need to make some creative choices and do your visual research, because when you write in your prompt, you should already know what kind of colors, texture, what kind of mood you are aiming to, what kind of symbols are going to be presented in the work. My favorite way to use AI scaffolding is actually not to generate entire image, but just some elements of it. So I can adjust just the parts of picture to create the mood what I want and pass it further to my team to find a solution how we can bring it to life through further production. So in this example, I actually used image which I found on a stock on Unsplash, and using Canva, I changed the background of it and I changed a little bit of the styling elements and created those sort of moody outer space inspired image, which I can show further as potentially how I see outcome for my photo shoot, for example. However, as you can see, this image is not perfect, like surface of the planet is not even and lighting is off in some parts of the image. So again, it is not final product, it's not a substitute for your work, it's just the way to bring your idea alive, especially when you cannot source maybe some elements of your image on stock libraries or produce them themselves at this stage of your production. So when you test in those techniques, I really encourage you to do not stop just one. Don't make just one successful sketch or one successful collage. Try to play around and test as many ideas as possible. As you can see in this example by the fashion designer, they try to use the long exposure as a technique they want to recreate through the embroidery on the final garment. And what they did, they started from physical test and then they did sketching and they identified areas of the image which are too redundant, and then they simplified through the further sketching with color and collaged it into studio space to see how big or how small they wanted this element to be present, and later on they reduced it further to adjust to the human figure. So as you see, it's always a journey, and you need to remember that idea visualization is sort of your playground when you can test out your ideas and keep discussion open for what is the best solution you can implement further. So those techniques, they completely applicable for all of your potential applications and submissions for residencies, various proposals, ideas, presentations, etc. As an example, I show in my own installation proposal, which I created with simple tools we discussed earlier. Most of it I created using Canva. I used ChatGPT to AI generate some parts of the image, specifically the white figures you can see, because I needed them to have a special clothes, which I cannot find on a stocks. The rest of the images I find on a stocks, to be precise, on a free pick. And I a little bit adjusted it later with Photoshop. I also added my references and reference to my previous work to support the final image of how I imagine this work might be. So with this said, I added one more example of what you can maybe try to take as inspiration for your homework to create something similar. This is a very simple example of idea presentation for speculative project. It's not real project, I just created it as an example. as a mural for a school football team, and you can see that there is school symbols, which is all your defaults. So it's symbols you already decided, all kind of colors or information which must be unchanged throughout your project. I included references to other illustrators which kind of carry out the mood which I want to have this for this mural. And I also used AI visualization to play around the main character, which is a lion, which is present in school symbols as a mascot of the school. And finally, I created a sketch with a color palette of how it might be on the wall. Again, it's a very raw sketch, and of course, if it was real-life project, I would have probably add 3-4 more alteration of a sketch without color and a few color palettes to choose from. But even like this, it's already a solid idea presentation as it is. So for your homework, I encourage you to maybe try out the various techniques we discussed today for your idea visualization. If you are feeling courageous and you already feel confident with your project, I also suggest you to try to create a similar concept board as you can see on this slide. And I'm really looking forward to see what you came up with. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson.